Good evening, dear viewers. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ifrah Noor and you're watching Dalsan TV. This is the English News Bulletin. Regional President of Puntland, Abdullahi Deni, has addressed residents and political stakeholders in Mogadishu last night as consultations between federal leaders and opposition figures continue. Deni, who has been in the capital for nearly 2 weeks, spoke about the ongoing negotiations and the need for political consensus ahead of upcoming electoral processes. The remarks come as leaders remain engaged in talks covering elections, governance and national priorities. Our reporter Mohamed Saido has more on this story.
Regional President of Puntland, Abdullahi Deni, on Saturday addressed members of the Banadir community in Mogadishu, where he spoke about the ongoing political negotiations and the broader national situation. In his remarks, Deni emphasized the importance of dialogue among Somali leaders, saying consultations underway in the capital are intended to reach an understanding that can guide upcoming electoral process and strengthen political stability. He also referenced the elections expected in several federal member states, indicating that clarity on those processes is necessary before moving toward federal level electoral decisions. Then his comments come during an extended stay in Mogadishu that has brought together federal authorities and opposition leaders for consultations covering governance, security, coordination, and humanitarian concerns, including drought conditions affecting parts of the country. While discussions continue, Deni's speech reflected both engagement in the talks and the expectation among stakeholders that negotiations will produce a mutually acceptable political pathway. Mohamed Saido, that's in English.
The United Nations has welcomed the launch of political talks between Somalia's federal leadership and opposition leaders in Mogadishu. The consultations, which began on Thursday at Villa Somalia, are aimed at building consensus on electoral arrangements and broader governance questions. Despite the start of dialogue, no concrete agreement has yet been announced. Our reporter Mohamed Saido has more.
The start of consultations between Somalia's federal government and opposition actors has drawn cautious optimism from international partners, who view sustained dialogue as essential for navigating political differences. The talks underway in Mogadishu since Thursday bring together senior leaders seeking consensus on electoral frameworks, constitutional questions, and intergovernmental relations. However, despite the launch of discussions, negotiations remain complex, with leaders holding differing positions on the proposed electoral model and the pace of political transition. The absence of a publicly confirmed agreement so far highlights the challenge of translating dialogue into concrete outcomes, even as talks continue behind closed doors. For many observers, the process itself is significant, reflecting recognition among Somali leaders that continued engagement is necessary to manage political tensions and avoid institutional uncertainty.
Turkey has rejected claims circulating online suggesting its cooperation with Somalia involves undisclosed arrangements over natural resources. Turkish officials say bilateral cooperation with Somalia spans multiple sectors and emphasize that Somalia maintains ownership over its resources. Mohamed Saido has more on this story.
Turkey's rejection of resource-related claims comes amid growing public discussion around Somalia's oil exploration and resource governance landscape. Cooperation between Ankara and Mogadishu has expanded over the past decades across defense, infrastructure, humanitarian assistance, and economic development, positioning Turkey as a key bilateral partner. Narratives suggesting undisclosed resource arrangements have circulated online in recent weeks, touching on themes that often generate domestic debate given Somalia's plan to develop its extractive sector. By dismissing the claims, Turkish officials appear to be addressing concerns while reinforcing the framework of formal agreements governing cooperation between the two countries. The episode also reflects the broader information environment surrounding Somalia's emerging resource sector, while competing narratives continue to shape public perception. Mohamed Saido, that's in English.
Somalia and Saudi Arabia have signed a strategic agreement aimed at strengthening cooperation in maritime transport and port development. The deal was signed by Somalia's Minister of Ports and Marine Transport Abdullahi Mohamed Noor, Saudi Arabia's Transport and Logistics Minister Saleh Al Jazeer. The agreement is said to support efforts to modernize Somalia's port infrastructure and expand trade connectivity. Our reporter has more on this story.
The Maritime Cooperation Agreement between Somalia and Saudi Arabia highlights increasing attention to Somalia's coastal infrastructure and logistics potential. With one of Africa's longest coastlines, Somalia occupies a strategic position along key shipping lines linking the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Yet decades of limited investment have constrained port capacity and maritime transport systems. The newly signed agreement outlines areas of collaboration that include port development, maritime transport cooperation, and institutional capacity building, aligning with Somalia's effort to modernize infrastructure and attract international investment. The partnership also reflects expanding economic engagement between Somalia and Gulf states, where maritime connectivity is emerging as a central area of cooperation, supporting trade and regional integration. Muhammad Saido, Dalsan English.
And finally, Somalia has officially rolled out the East African Community Passport, marking another step in its regional integration journey. Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre announced the rollout on Thursday, describing it as part of Somalia's effort to expand mobility and opportunities for its citizens across East Africa. Somalia joined the bloc in 2023, and officials say the new passport is expected to support travel, trade, and regional cooperation. Thank you for joining us. That's it from us today. Kindly stay connected on our platforms at Dalsan TV and Dalsan English.